In this final episode of our 3-part series, we bring the journey full circle, exploring how thinking classrooms are not just transforming math instruction, but reshaping how students see themselves as learners, collaborators, and problem solvers. What does it look like when students create their own double black diamond or extra spicy math challenges? What happens when teachers pause mid-lesson to dig deeper into a student's idea? When assessment becomes a conversation, not a checklist? Raquel and Carina share how flexible routines, balanced assessment, and the thinking classroom approach help their students build confidence, resilience, and ownership of their learning. As Carina puts it, it shifted their mindset to, I am working and I am learning with the people around me. I can help them, and they can help me. If you've ever wondered where to start, or whether you're a math person, this episode might just show you that you already are. Let's rejoin the conversation. Welcome to Northeast Voices, a podcast that spotlights the innovators and change makers in education. We're here to share the stories of inclusion, empowerment, and the impactful connections with the Northeast School Division and beyond, focusing on the pivotal role of students, families, and teachers. Join us as we dive into the conversations revealing the strategies and moments shaping the future of education. Any Voices is your platform for inspiration and connection, and is recorded in the Northeast School Division, sharing the land of Treaties 4, 5, 6, and homeland of the Métis in Northeast Saskatchewan. Be sure to subscribe and join our community of innovators and change makers. Let's get started. I think that's some of my favorite parts of when the teachers are able to come together, or the huddles. You were in math huddles, so huddles are part of our innovation sprint process where teachers get together weekly and have 15-minute conversations about how things are going, what impact are you seeing, what are you noticing. It's kind of like our thinking, almost a thinking classroom version, but kind of looking at what we're doing as teachers. I noticed a couple things that you mentioned in there. You talked about criteria. So thinking classrooms is sort of a way to get students digging in and thinking more deeply. And we talk a lot about success criteria, and we're going to dig into success criteria more this coming year, because the clearer we all are on where we're going and what I'm looking for, we're better able to communicate, we're better able to self-assess where they are. So even though we start with a thinking task, we don't always give them all these criteria off the start, because that would take away sometimes from the task that we're doing. So it's a little bit in a different order, but you're highlighting how they're hitting those criteria, or you're referencing those pieces as they come through. I think one question that people might have is, so we're doing thinking classrooms and you can see all of these things happening. How do you assess to know whether they attain the outcome or not attain the outcome when there's everything happening all at once? Do you have some strategies or reflection on how that went, or things you might tweak for next year?
I find that I still need to integrate other parts. I'm not just doing building thinking classrooms. It's definitely a large portion of our day, but we are doing discussions together. We are doing activities that show their learning as well. Even math manipulatives, build this pattern for me, or can you show me what shape this is? So we're definitely doing a combination of things. I do find that it's an easy check-in for me, like the building thinking classroom. If we're doing a number task and they're in their groups, I can easily go around and check to see who has it and who doesn't. And I might not be able to do that all in one day. That's only if you're working with a few groups that maybe need a little bit more attention, that sometimes happens. So I just have to be aware of who I need to check in with. And then I also like when they can show their learning in different ways. So just kind of collecting that information in a bunch of different processes, and those discussions are still really important.
Yeah. I think myself this year, one of the ways was moving into the questions, right? The check your understanding questions. That was one way. And that certainly wasn't, we wouldn't start there. Maybe that was partway through a unit or an outcome. And having those, for me, the green circle, blue square, black diamond. And then that idea for the students that here are the questions. You choose where you start. If you want to start with a black diamond, go for it. If you want to start at a green, if you want to start at the blue square and you decide partway through, nope, this isn't a good fit for me, then you can go to the green. Or if you do it and, oh, this isn't working, go to a black diamond. And I think often I would set that up and have them at their desks, at their spots with their own individual whiteboards. And then I would just move around the room and watch, and then with a checklist, where was their entry point? Did they start with the green or the blue or the black?
Yeah.
Where did they go with that? Some of them, I'm going to do one of each. And so they go and they do all one of each and then be sitting there. And I'd say, well, there's such a thing as a double black. Can you make up your own? Like, can you make up your own double black question that fits here? And so, that was one way that I was able to do that. Raquel had mentioned too about it not being, we're not doing thinking classroom all day, every day, or every math class, right? I mean, it's a starting point. It's a part of my morning routine. But then also this year, I switched sort of the way I was doing my math instruction and my math time. Instead of doing it every day, I do a block in the afternoons every other day. And that I found, and then I kind of, I approached it more as, so we did math on my own, math with a teammate, math with Mrs. Calow, and then math, it would either be hands-on math or math with technology. And it would just kind of depend on what we were working on, but that would typically run a week. I would start something with a lesson, with a thinking task, and then move into those stations, and then they rotate through. And then that math with Mrs. Calow time was a really great touch point, right? Because often we might recreate a similar thinking task and just do it on a smaller scale, just 3 or 4 of us at a time at the table. But that was a really great check-in and place for assessment. Yeah, that was and then I still had some of their independent work that they would do on math on my own, where I could sit there and look at it and mark it and talk to them about it and say, let's revisit this. What could we do differently? What tools could you use to help you to solve this problem? And so it just allowed for some of that. Yeah.
I appreciate that you both said it's not thinking classrooms every day, all the time, because that can seem pretty intimidating as a place to start, but also how the criteria that you're looking for in relation to that specific outcome. You've set up the tasks to give them the opportunity to demonstrate that. And if they're doing that and you can observe it, then you've seen that, you've made note of it. You've talked about discussions, so the conversations that you're having. You've talked about them working on their own types of questions. So there's products. So it's really, when we talk about balanced assessment, both of you gave a fantastic overview of, this is how we get deeper into the thinking. This is how we have the opportunities. And I really liked how both of you talked and mentioned, so tell me more about that. Or, just because I put down one thing, that's not the end of the story for me there. There's more opportunities for me to go, oh, I missed that, or I could rework it and continue to show you the level of understanding that I have. So I really appreciate how you've pulled assessment together there. And so you between all of you, you've hit on between the two of you, you've hit on a lot of different topics. How you're building ownership in student learning, how you're building that community, the collaboration, the vulnerability. I think both of you mentioned resilience. You didn't say it outright, but the grit to keep going. I think sometimes students struggle with that. It's hard, so I'll stop. But if I have some peers to help keep me going, or asking questions, or I can look around the room and think, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Or I wonder, it's not about the right answer, because I don't really even know who had the right answer in the end, but how did they get there? What was the difference between that? Those are all fantastic problem skills for critical thinking, creative thinking. I like how you've talked about the kind of like a daily 5, but a math version of it. With technology, you're working in these different stations. So back to the routines that you've created are fantastic. So do either of you have a question for each other as we kind of start to wrap things up? And it's okay if you don't. I just thought we would pause and ask.
I feel like when we talked a couple weeks ago, it was just really nice to hear Carina sharing how she is using it within her classroom. And I think it would be really beneficial to maybe be able to go and explore that a little bit more with each other and other NESD teachers, and to see how they're actually implementing it, because it looks different in every classroom.
And I think that's that's huge with it, because it kind of needs to, especially when it's you know, a different way of approaching it to start out with. I know last year when we had done it as part of our huddles, our sprints, and coming back, and the message was sort of like, pick something and start with it, and let's come back and
Yes.
talk about it. And it was neat to see the different approaches that people, or the place that people chose to start, which really showed a lot about their interest and their passion, and I think that comes off, right? I know one of our peers had started with using card games for math. And that was the approach he took. And so I was doing math talks, and we talked about that and doing that morning routine. And he was teaching doing math and had card tricks. And it was just so neat, because that wouldn't be my place to start.
Yeah.
But I had the benefit in that situation that my daughter happened to be in his class, and I popped in there for SLCs, and I just sort of stood there and went like, wow, I'm watching her do this card trick, And when I thought about it from a teacher base and looked at all of the outcomes and all of the things I knew that she was demonstrating for me with that card trick. And then, of course, as a teacher, saying to my colleague, how did you teach that trick to 20 some students at a time?
Yeah.
That's impressive, right? But it's so beneficial to see and allow people to pick something like that. And because he was passionate about it, and the kids just were all over it. And I sat there saying, hey, do you know what the kind of math you're just demonstrating this to me? And did you know you could do that? And having those conversations. And I think that's really good. It's just nice to talk with each other and to hear some of what our colleagues are doing and where they're starting, and that it can look different. And it should. Yeah.
Yes. I like how you said, like, just pick something, and it can be like a
Mhm.
small little task, but just like
Yep.
easy steps to get into
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
you might find out that you are a math person in the end.
That's right. Turns
We're
out
all
I
math
love
people. It turns
yeah. It turns out I it's my favorite thing to teach now, which
me too
I
now.
laugh at myself saying that. I'm well aware.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think even, as we move in with Math Up and more people in the division having access to that, I mean, that itself is a good place to start when you're thinking, like, it's not just thinking classroom all day every day. That's part of it too, is following sort of how that's laid out. A lot of the way they introduce the topic, or the hands-on activities that you would do with your classroom, those are they really follow sort of the philosophy and the thinking behind thinking classroom. And
Thanks.
so it's a good place to start too. And of course, you have access to some extra tasks, wonder tasks, and different approaches, but it sort of walks you through the idea that it's not a teacher-centered instruction and then independent task time and then a test and move on. It really,
Mhm.
if you follow step by step, it forces you to explore a little bit with different ways of instruction and different ways of them exploring and showing you their understanding too.
So Math Hub is a fantastic place for you to start as a resource, because I think one of the things that seemed overwhelming maybe when we went to the PD was, how do you come up with all of these thinking tasks
Mhm.
and how do you find them? And I think you've both highlighted
Yeah.
the chance to talk with each other. You
Yeah.
summarized the purpose of the huddles fantastic with our Mama Weak, which is where we go into each other's classroom, and you would, if you invited me in, you'd ask me to watch for something, and then we'd have a conversation about it. And it could just be, there's learning for the feedback somebody would give to me, based on what I've asked, but also the feedback is, the learning is also just being in somebody else's classroom.
Yep.
That was the privilege of being a learning consultant, was seeing all the classrooms K to 12 and thinking that we have amazing teachers all across this division. And there wasn't a classroom that I didn't walk into where I didn't learn something and think about how the environment was, or how they were helping students to regulate, or how they were getting them to think more deeply. And I think the two of you have done an absolutely amazing job. You are podcast experts. I think you've done it extremely well. We could keep the conversation going for a very long time, but we'll wrap it up here. So I'm thinking, kind of a last question, unless you have something different, is you talked about two different types of impact. You talked about how it shifted you in your teaching personally as a teacher. So I'm curious, what was the thing that shifted in you most, and that's making you most excited to keep going? Because you both said that you love math. That's one of your favorite things. And then on the student side, what was the impact in the students that resonated with you most?
I think for me, just that student engagement and allowing them the opportunity to grow as a learner, and just that whole process of having them realize that they can do it and build their skills, and they don't need me to stand up there and tell them what they need to do.
Yeah.
So just that whole transition of the student-centered activities and them working through things together and collaborating and just building that community, I think was one of the biggest things for me, and just that transition of I don't have to do it all.
Yeah, I think I would say the same. Really just seeing that sense of community and that they were able to develop, and the language that they were able to use. And I think just getting a different mindset themselves, that I'm
Mhm.
working and I'm learning with the people around me, right? Um and I can help them and they can help me, and also and the idea that we're problem solving and it isn't just math, right? I saw it transfer between different subjects, right? The idea that there's a problem. What am I trying to do here? What problem am I trying to solve? Are there different ways that I could do it? If I'm stuck, where can I go for help? What tools exist that can help me? And the idea that all of that is okay. That's where your learning is happening, is in using the tools and reaching out to your ski patrol or whatever, right? So I
Yes.
think there were plenty of times where a student might point out, how many, and they'd come up with something, and I'd say, okay, we're going to pause, and I'd go and get counters or cups, or I'd go get something, and all of a sudden they'd be
Yes.
demonstrating and showing, and someone else would try it. And so I think that idea that I'm learning right along with them as a
Absolutely.
group is huge, and it's less of a me doing, now you do it, and it's more um facilitating, really. Yeah.
Okay. Very powerful. The things that both of you have said. You're building agency, you're building ownership. And if they're in grade 2, 3, and 4, and you're teaching them that they are able to learn on their own, they're able to problem solve, they can self-assess where they're at, that's huge, because you're shaping the rest of their learning to instill that confidence and that resilience in them, and for them to understand that teachers are there to walk alongside them. We're there to strategically put things in place so that can
Mhm.
happen, but that
Yeah.
even teachers are still learning, because when you said you paused it, and I think that's the other piece, you recognize something in motion and you paused it and said, let's
Yeah.
dig into this here. Let's grab
Yeah.
those manipulatives and
Yeah.
talk about it now while it's important and it's happening.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we get stuck in the, I'm getting here because I need to get there, and we're trying to cover
Yeah.
it. And I remember Melissa McFarland said, what if we stopped asking what did I miss, and start talking about what are all the things that I learned today?
Mhm.
What am I engaging in?
Yeah.
What am I taking home to share? What's
Mhm.
impacting? And I think that was a lot of time in the huddles. Sometimes the privilege is you get to sit around colleagues who can reflect back to you and help share that you're, even sometimes when we think we're having a small impact, it actually is making quite a huge impact. And what the two of you have started, and the other math leads and the teachers experimenting with, not just thinking classrooms, but all types of different strategies to engage students more deeply and bring them into self-assessment or documenting their own learning, and that evidence, that's going to ripple out into building citizens who are going to be the people who are problem solving things for us in the future, that are going to say, maybe that didn't work, but we can figure out how it does, or I could reach out and talk to a colleague, or I could collaborate with someone here, or I could reach out across the world, because we now have that ability to connect with people around the world to do that. So thank you so much for joining me in June. That was a fantastic reflection that, like I said, absolutely amazing. Warms my heart to hear all of the amazing things that you've done this year, and that you're excited to look forward to next year. And you both talked about how valuable it is to connect with colleagues, and that's the point of the podcast. So I thank you for sharing that and the stories and your experiences, and why it was worth the investment of the time, because it isn't just it's going to happen tomorrow. It is
No.
a process that's going to take time, and you need to be committed to that process. But I think you've said in a number of different ways why it's valuable, why it not only impacts your students, but it impacts you as a teacher. And any last things that you'd like to share before we end the podcast?
I think it's just like those little steps are super important, and it is okay if sometimes it doesn't work. I think that's
Yep.
a reality too.
Yep,
It's fun.
absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Well, and I think personally as someone, I'm 16 or however many years in, I've found it a little kind of rejuvenating for me, just a different way of approaching it. And not only was it impactful in my instruction with math, but also
Did we lose
through
you?
other subject areas, as well, differently. The kinds of questions I'm asking and the ability to step back and let them build their understanding rather than me just dishing it out to them. So it really, I felt it really helped in all areas, professionally speaking. So yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely
Yeah, thanks.
fantastic. I appreciate the time that you've taken at the end of the day in June. If you have listened to this podcast and you're curious about how to get started with thinking classrooms, you can reach out to us and we can get you in contact with people. If you want to go to different classrooms, talk to your administrator about how you might be able to use some collegial time to see other people in the building that are working on it. There is PD available for you in the Northeast School Division, and you can always reach out to us and let us know if you want to learn more about what a number talk meant, or you want to dig into more about routines. Then we can always come back and ask questions. Or thinking classrooms is working for you and you're just as excited about it as Carina and Raquel are. Please reach out and let us know, and you could be on our next episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for part 3. In this final episode, Raquel and Carina offered a powerful reflection on how thinking classrooms have reshaped their teaching and transformed student learning. Here's our key takeaways. Balanced assessment in action. Both Carina and Raquel shared that assessment became a dynamic and responsive process built on observation, conversation, and a variety of tasks. That offered deeper insight into student understanding and growth. Flexible routines that supported deeper thinking. Thinking classroom tasks offered an opportunity to jumpstart math conversations, and Carina shared how using a station-based approach where she had math on my own, with a teammate, with the teacher, and hands-on or tech, not only complemented thinking classrooms, but also gave students multiple entry points to demonstrate their learning and engage meaningfully with math. They also reminded us that starting small and sharing practice is important. Begin with manageable steps and lean into collegial support. As Carina said, pick something and start with it. It can look different in every classroom, and it should. Investing in agency and collaboration. When given consistent opportunity, students took ownership of their learning, choosing challenge levels, creating extra spicy or double black tasks, and supporting one another in a community of learners. Carina shared how students have developed a mindset of mutual support. I am working and I am learning with the people around me. I can help them, and they can help me. Lastly, reframing what it means to be a math person. Perhaps the most inspiring of all, both Carina and Raquel shared how their math mindset has shifted. It turns out, it's now their favorite thing to teach. Thanks for joining us with part 3 so we could celebrate the growth of students and teachers alike, and how it offered us a powerful reminder that small steps can lead to big shifts. Whether you're just starting or already experimenting with thinking classrooms, the message is clear. We're all math people. We just might not have realized it yet. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining our community of innovators and change makers. We hope the conversations and stories have ignited a spark within. We'd like to express our gratitude to our dedicated Northeast educators. Until next time, remember to subscribe to Any Voices and join us on the next episode as we share the stories of learning shaping our future. Thanks for listening.